too demonic, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it was the work of Satan. Which to me, as a kind of secular guy living in London, sounds kind of just as nuts.
Well, were they really successful with any of these experiments?
Well, we know that there's some proven success with remote viewing,
right?
And obviously, MK Ultra had a great deal of success, if you can call it success. Invisibility, what it seemed to do, some of the philosophy behind this was and this was all the brainchild of a lieutenant colonel called Jim Channon, by the way. And Jim's idea was, if you could get a soldier to reach for the impossible, maybe that soldier could find something possible along the way. And some specific successes of this endeavor, this First Earth Battalion endeavor, includes a lot of non-lethal weapons that are used today, sound technologies like they're using in Iraq, blasting prisoners with Barney the Purple Dinosaur, the sticky foam and all of that kind of stuff. That all came from Jim's philosophy that the soldier should be all that he can be. And in fact, the Army slogan, "Be all that you can be," came from a fan of the First Earth Battalion, who thought being all you can be includes walking through walls and so on.
This is just incredible that we would be concentrating on this to do these kinds of things. Now, of course, I've always been aware of the remote viewing program that the military had undertook, but I did not know that they wanted to walk through walls, make goats die by thinking of it. And by the way, not that any animal is more important than the other, but why didn't they concentrate on mice?
Well, apparently it turns out that they've gotten some psychologists at Special Forces. This was when they were doing the conventional, throwing the hand grenades into rooms full of animals. And they were doing all of this to dogs. And it was just really upsetting the soldiers. And in fact, I found something on a news group when I was writing this book when the soldier was saying it was awful. We had to go in and break dogs' legs and then nurse them back to health, and everybody was really upset. We just didn't want to do all this to dogs. And so some psychologists within Special Forces determined that it was almost impossible to form an emotional bond with a goat. So that's why Dog Lab became Goat Lab. And that's why they started saying it goats, because they had goats on base anyway.
Were we the only ones?
They're still ordering goats, by the way. They've just ordered another 1,000 goats or 600 goats.
What do you mean? Are they still doing this?
Well, what I know for certain is that the new Chief of Staff of the Army, General Pete Shoemaker, is a big fan of Jim Channon, and who's the guy who really invented all of this, and has brought him back from retirement. And Jim's been meeting with majors and colonels and so on. I can't help thinking that it's not a coincidence that Pete Shoemaker...
I don't believe in coincidences, by the way, John.
Right. Well, you see, I kind of do, but I think this isn't one. Is that the Pentagon... I know that General Shoemaker wasn't the Pentagon's first choice for the new Chief of Staff, but the fact that they asked this guy, who is a really big fan of the human potential movement, the New Age movement, Jim Channon, they asked him, Rumsfeld asked him to be Chief of Staff of the Army, and has asked for creative input into the war on terror, and Pete Shoemaker has brought Jim Channon back from retirement, and we know that the remote viewers were called after 9/11. So it certainly seems to me that these paranormal endeavors, because they always come back in times of crisis, in the first bunch of these kind of extreme out-of-the-box ideas began with MK Ultra during the Cold War. MK Ultra was a response to the paranoia of the Cold War, the Sidney Gottlieb and so on. And then it all came back in the sort of post-Vietnam funk with Jim Channon and the First Earth Battalion, where people just weren't joining the military. It was a really bad time for the military. And that's when all these New Age ideas... And now we're in the third great crisis, aren't we?
Yeah, we sure
are.
So,
you can look to history and you can look at the facts that are out there and you can guess the paranormal stuff.
Did they try to experiment on anybody to try to kill them by staring at them or using, mind manipulation or anything like that?
Well, I never heard of specific stories of that, but that, as General Stubblebine said to me quite seriously, if you can do this to a goat, you can do it to a person. So it's obvious that they had this stuff in mind. But what they clearly are doing in Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib and so on are these sort of warped, perverted versions of these hippie ideals that made their way into the military in the late 70s, early 1980s. I mean, if you stick a prisoner in a room and blast him with the I Love You song by Barney the Purple Dinosaur for 24 hours straight, while flashing a strobe light at him.
Raising some kids, I think that's what they did to me for a while.
Right. Luckily, my son was always too wise for Barney, so I didn't succumb to that myself. But, Jim Channon, the First Earth Battalion manual that floated through the military in the late 1970s with all these ideas, soldiers should try and walk through walls, everything from that to soldiers should carry baby lambs into hostile countries and place the lambs on the ground and give the enemy a hug. These were some more of Jim Channon's ideas. He was also advocating quite heavily in the First Earth Battalion manual the use of sound technologies, high and low frequency sounds, blasting people with silent sounds and discordant music. And when they started doing all of that in Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib, and I've met Guantanamo detainees who told me that they were, put into a room and blasted with an all-girl Fleetwood Mac covers band.
That's not all bad if you like Fleetwood Mac.
Well, yeah, although what seemed kind of weird with that particular bit of musical torture was that unlike Barney and, Springsteen and Metallica, this was played at normal volume to this guy, Jamal Al-Harris. He was put in Guantanamo. They put him in a room and they played him Fleetwood Mac at normal volume. The conspiracy theorist in me thinks, well, why would they do that? And I said to Jamal, was it entertainment? And Jamal said, certainly not. We suspect they might have been lacing these CDs with, high and low frequency sounds.
Well, what was the outcome after they played this music to these people?
Well, Jamal said it didn't really do anything at all to him. But, the military does have a history of trying out stuff that doesn't work. Maybe they stuck subliminal sounds in there and it just didn't do anything. Subliminal sounds always sound so kind of mysterious, but it's really just a PSYOP soldier at Fort Bragg.
I just can't believe
we microphone, confess. Confess.
We pay all this money in taxes, John, and they're using Barney the Dinosaur songs to torture people mentally.
You know what I think about Barney? Now, by the way, but the original point that I was coming to with all of this was that all of that was contained in Jim Channon's manual too. And I said to General Stubblebine and to Jim Channon, is this the First Earth Battalion musical torture? Is this your idea alive today? And they both said, yeah.
How did you find this? How did you find this out?
It began really. It began with me sneaking into Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones.
Well, and we're going to talk with you and Alex next hour about that.
Yeah, it just seems so nuts. I won't talk about it now if we're talking about it then, but Bohemian Grove just seems so nuts that our leaders would want to spend their summer vacation throwing a papier-mâché effigy into the fiery belly of a giant stone owl.
It's just crazy. Stay with us. Jon Ronson, our guest. His website, of course, is linked up with coasttocoastam.com, but it's simple. I'll spell it. Jon, Jon, Ronson, Ronson. Just run them together. JonRonson.com. We actually had people staring at goats trying to kill them. What a story. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Well, next hour with guest Jon Ronson, we're going to talk about the Bohemian Grove. He infiltrated it. And then during the middle part of that hour, we're going to bring in Alex Jones. He, too,